Pokemon fans, Tamashii here. But not everyone loves the yellow rodent. No one can deny that when you think about Pokemon, Pikachu is one of the first images that pops into your head. And in every generation of Pokemon games, Game Freak has tried to capitalize on this by introducing a Pikachu clone to try to sell the new games. For the most part, these little guys don't tend to be too popular, since they're pretty redundant by design, but a lot of thought goes into how each Pikachu-wannabe represents their generation. Each Pikachu clone has to capture what we love about Pikachu, while integrating something iconic from the game it's representing to really sell that feature to the public. So how well does each Pikachu lookalike represent its game? Today we're going to rank all 5 of the Pikachu spawn and find out. But first, a little background on Pikachu. Did you know that our favorite yellow mouse is not always going to be the face of the franchise? Early on, Clefairy was picked to be Ash's companion for the pilot episode of the Pokemon anime, due to a popular Pocket Monsters manga that was in circulation at the time, which starred Red and his rude Clefairy sidekick. But knowing the potential Pokemon had to be an eternal cash cow, the folks at Pokemon focus grouped for the mascot of the franchise, and discovered that Pikachu had wider appeal than Clefairy, since boys liked Pikachu since it was cool and powerful, and girls liked Pikachu since it was cute, providing a more gender-neutral appeal. So at the last minute, Pikachu stole Clefairy's role as Ash's sidekick, and cemented itself as one of the most recognizable Japanese icons of all time. So now that we know what made Pikachu the global superstar he is today, let's rank his understudies and see where they stack up. Number 5. Pachirisu. Generation 4 brought a lot of huge innovations to the series. With the physical special split, battling got a lot more balanced and diverse. And with the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, Pokemon can now be traded around the world. There's a decent amount there to work with that's really unique to Diamond and Pearl, so certainly they could come up with something interesting for its mascot to really represent all these features, right? Well, for the life of me, if Pachirisu is meant to represent any part of Diamond and Pearl, I can't figure it out. There's nothing in its name or design that reminds me of anything in the games. At first I thought maybe it was more abstract, like maybe its stats and moves would showcase the benefits of splitting physical and special moves, but its base attack and special attack are exactly the same. I guess if you really squint at it sideways, its ears and the little line on its forehead could maybe represent signal bars and a Wi-Fi connection, but that's really pushing it. As much as I love Pachirisu for the way Seijun Park worked it into his team a couple years ago at Worlds, as a mascot it really makes the least sense. Number 4. Dedenne. Generation 6 focused much more on graphical overhaul than adding lots of features, but it did introduce a new type, Fairy, so of course the mascot of this generation is half fairy. It definitely makes me think of Kalos when I hear the typing, but just looking at Dedenne, there's nothing in its design that communicates to me that it is a fairy type, so it falls a little flat. Also, with Generation 6 having a huge focus on beauty in the region of France, you would think there'd be a better basis for its design than a Japanese dormouse. So Dedenne gets participation points since it doesn't outright fail to represent its region, but it doesn't stand out at all, and it fails to really sell me on the idea of a fairy-type Pokemon. Number 3. Emolga. It's hard to put my finger on one feature that Gen 5 brought to the table, since it's really known more for its ambitious story and strong characters than anything else. I mean, sure, it introduced triple and rotation battles, the Dream World, and musicals, but when you ask people about Black and White, I'm not sure many of them would actually remember those things were in the game, since they were such a small part of it. So how do you design a mascot to represent such a complex and story-driven Pokemon game? Well, it seems like they just kinda distilled it down to the core theme. Emolga is Black and White's mascot because it's black and it's white. Get it? Otherwise, they didn't really try very hard to work at incorporating more unique features from the game into its design. And with how many Pokemon in the Unova Dex use this color scheme to begin with, it took me a while to even notice what stood out about Emolga. I guess if you really want to stretch it, Emolga's name in Japanese is Emonga, and Emon translates into garment or drape, which is a reference to the flaps on its arms, but it could also possibly reference the costumes your Pokemon get to wear in musicals, which are one of the worst parts of Generation 5. If you asked me to design a Pokemon to be the mascot of Gen 5 that had to resemble Pikachu, I'm not sure I could really do better either, with how little Gen 5 offered feature-wise, so I give this one some credit anyway. It's not a terrible mascot, but it does illustrate how hard it is to really sell something on story alone. Number 2. Pichu. I know Pichu doesn't really count as a Pikachu clone, since it's actually just an extension of Pikachu's evolutionary line, but it does fill the mascot role for its generation, so it'll have to count for this list. Generation 2 is probably one of the most innovative games in the series, since at the time it was designed as a logical conclusion to the Pokemon franchise. I think probably the biggest core mechanic it brought to the table though was Pokemon gender and breeding, so it's fitting that the mascot of this generation is only obtainable through breeding. Though I'm not much a fan of baby Pokemon, they were a clever way to introduce players to the new mechanic, and encourage trainers to try breeding lots of different Pokemon together to see what they could get. So Pichu does do a really good job of selling that idea. In promotional materials, the Pichu Bros showed up a lot alongside Pikachu, and their interaction made the fact that they were related a lot more obvious too. Though I'm not much a fan of Pichu personally, it was a pretty good mascot for its generation, so it gets the number 2 spot. And the number 1 Pikachu clones are Plusle Minun. Generation 3 was a big turning point for the series. We were leaving 8-bit behind, and all that went with it. So we had to really start over with a new world and lots of new features to introduce to people. Aside from moving up to 32-bit, double battles were the big selling point of Ruby and Sapphire. So of course, they required 2 mascots that each knew a double battle specific move and had abilities, another new feature, to help them work together. With Helping Hand and their plus and minus abilities, Plusle and Minun tie everything about Ruby and Sapphire together in one cute package to sell to people. Even the colors, Ruby and Sapphire. Unfortunately for a lot of people, it was just too different, with the bright palettes that could support a lot of different colors and the new gimmicks, so these mascots weren't very popular with a lot of people. But I do still admire how committed to their concept they were. Game Freak really believed in the game they were making, and celebrated those games full out when designing Plusle and Minun. So to me, they're the epitome of Pokemon mascots. So there you have it, the top 5 Pikachu clones. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more, you can check out some of my other videos by clicking the annotations below. And as always, don't forget to click here to subscribe for more Pokemon videos every week. See ya!